solve the issues that require issues of the individual cases and both yourself at the level of the issues. Right? I'm going to ask you to give me your issues of the acknowledge that the issues of home affairs cut across from the child into their family members. The issue of Mr. Komise and the brother comes in, it links again with Chaula and all of that. And I'm going to try to understand how best we clean up. If any of you has a particular relationship with anyone that got to do with our work, or anyone who somehow compromised in our system, I want to know that this issue got to do with cleaning up this department and get the right people to do the right job for the department. So I'll come to that point later. So I want to draw the same exercise again because I'm dealing with officials at another level. You're not DDGs, so DDGs comes easy because they know their privileges and rights comes easy to administer. Oh, you just read the last paragraph. But for you, I want us to. Oh, it's the DDG. Oh, it's the DDG. No, but let me do it for the purpose of this engagement. Let me do it to read the entire process. Take into account that for the first time we're having women to appear before the committee. There's been gentlemen, maybe to be soft the only thing with women. Gentlemen, they seem to be taking a particular position that we're going to show them. So women maybe they'll be more eligible to engage with us. On that note, let me take this opportunity to start the process. That Section 16 of Powers and Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislature Act number 4 of 2004 regulate the swearing in of witnesses appearing before the Committee of Parliament. In particular, it empowers the person presiding in case of the chairperson, which is myself, at the inquiry to administer the oath or accept affirmation from a person appearing before that committee, meaning that it's yourself now. In other words, these are the two options for any witness. The chairperson must recognize each witness' choice in this regard. Now, I'm going to take an oath or affirmation. An oath. Oath, Jackie, oath again. Okay, that's fine. Prior to the administration of the oath or affirmation, the chairperson must warn the witness that I'm now owning you. She or he is required by law to answer all questions fully, truthfully, and satisfactorily. She or he must produce any documents that he is required to produce in connection with the subject matter of the inquiry, notwithstanding the fact that answers or documents could incriminate him or her or expose him or her to the criminal, civil proceeding or damage. It is an offense to make any false or misleading statement whilst under oath. Section 17(2)(e) of Powers and Privileges Act of Parliament states that, right? The chair must further assure the witness that in terms of Section 16(3) of the Powers and Privileges and Immunities Act, any evidence given under oath or affirmation before the committee may not be used against he or her in any court or place outside Parliament, except in a criminal proceeding concerning a charge of perjury relating to evidence or documents required in this proceeding. So no one is going to call up a second disciplinary hearing that you came to Parliament and you did the following things, therefore you're going to be charged, unless when the information that you have lied under oath in this regard. The chair must then proceed to administer oath or affirmation depending on the choice of the witnesses. We now know the choice of the witnesses. May you now stand so that we administer oath, three of you. You're going, both of three of you are going to read after me. I, your names, just be on record, man. Just be on record. Each one of you just pull up a mic. Just light the mic, light the mic too. When I say I, you then read your name, okay? Okay. I want all of you to do the same so that we don't repeat it again. You just read your name. When I say I, J. McKay, and then yourself, and then you'll do that, right? When I say I, so that you have record all of you. I, Jackson Wesley McKay, Charlie Jagdeep Moka, Mukidi Dynamo Boko, swear that the evidence I shall give will be the truth. Swear that the evidence I shall give will be the truth. The whole truth and nothing but the truth. The whole truth and nothing but the truth. Raise your right hand and say, so help me God. So help me God. It's a very serious process. I know it's still when you for review. But thank you very much. Can you sign those oaths then and submit them here? Yeah, we have a package, I think, for members, people's. I think you do have our document that is going to be guiding us. I'm going to start with where we are. Where we are is informed by a submission that was made by ourselves on the 5th October, May. This is 10. Oh, 10. Oh, I thought it was 19. Okay. 5 October 2015. This submission talks about the removal and redeployment of persons that are employed by the department under your administration as human resource. And these persons then report directly under DDG Immigration, who happen to be Mr. McKay, and the rest of the people, the chief directors and the supervisors that we now all know that Major was the supervisor responsible for such offices. I'm going to ask you DDG Mwabo, to start with you, to talk to us about this submission. And I'll be happy if you have it in your position. Tell us about this submission. If you are willing, you can even went as far as reading this submission for us, so that all of us understand and know what is it that we are dealing with. Then we'll then identify each one of you and the role that you played in the process. Okay? So, on that note, first I'm going to start with you having to introduce yourself. DDG Mwabokwe, when did you start your employment in the Department of Home Affairs, your responsibilities and all of that? And the second person, except McKay, that we all know that is the DDG responsible for immigration. So two of you, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves. Okay, just proceed with you first.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and good afternoon, Honorable Members. My name, as I stated, is Nkidi Mohoboko. I'm the Deputy Director General responsible for Human Resource Management and Development in the Department of Home Affairs. I was appointed on 1st of May 2014 At that time, the branch was still called Learning Academy, the Learning Academy. After a few months, the department decided to merge the two branches of the Learning Academy and Human Resource Management. And now the branch was called Human Resource Management and Development. And I was given the responsibility to oversee the two branches. That means that the entire responsibility pertaining to all issues, recruitment, people acquisition, selection, placement, utilization of people, discipline management, as well as capacity building and development, all reside within my scope of work. I don't know if that suffices to you.
And then, no, that's fine. The next person next to you.
Good day, honourable members of the committee, Chairperson. My name is Charlotte Moka, as I've indicated earlier. I joined the Department of Home Affairs on the 1st of May 2010 in the capacity of Chief Director, People Management and Development at that point in time. And in this capacity, I was responsible for what would generally be known as core human resources, which would be all your people acquisition processes, your staffing matters, both temporary and permanent. I was responsible for performance management and certain strategic elements of the skills development framework within the department, as well as what we termed employee benefits, which is basically your entire core suite of services regarding salaries, conditions of service, and service benefits. As of the 1st of April 2016, in line with the merger that the DDG has just spoken to, the performance management and skills development functionality that resided within my portfolio moved into another chief directorate. So currently my title is people management.
People management.
Yes.
In your office, how many people are employed in your office?
Within my chief directorate, sir?
No, in your office.
In my own office.
Yes, in your office, how many people are there? You have a PA?
Myself and my office manager, sir, too.
It's true.
That's it.
Who's your manager officer?
My office manager is David Nkambula.
David Nkambula.
Yes.
How long has he been in the office?
David has been in my office probably since around July 2010.
2010?
Yes.
Same with you? You started in 20?
I started in May 2010 and he started in July 2010.
July 2010?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's only one person that works for you?
That's right. Sir.
Where was his employment before?
David and myself have known each other from the South African Social Security Agency. So when I joined SASSA in 2006, I think it might have been the 1st of February 2006, I appointed him there. He came from, I think, the diplomatic corps, if I recall, and he was my office manager, I think from February 2007. And then when I joined Home Affairs, he then subsequently transferred over.
How did he get transferred to you back? Followed you to Home Affairs?
There was an approval to that. There was a request put forward.
By who?
By myself.
Why?
Prior to joining Home Affairs, sir.
Yeah.
Prior to joining Home Affairs, I put in an inquiry to establish whether it would be possible for him to transfer with me from SASSA to Home Affairs. And there was an approval given within Home Affairs and communicated back to me as such.
Why was this interest to move with him?
I think probably with the culture in SASSA, sir, was just such that that we, whilst in the South African Social Security Agency, we had a culture of allowing executive managers or senior managers to bring on board the office capacity of the staff of their choice to be able to adequately serve and support their officers. And I think it was within that mindset that when I did move to Home Affairs, I inquired whether it would be possible for him to take a transfer across. If it had been disapproved on the side of Home Affairs, so I would obviously then have really pushed that. But it was just an inquiry from my side and it was duly approved as such.
What was it?
I am not certain, so I would assume it was perhaps the then DDGHR. I would assume. I would need to just go and check those records.
Under a directorate, how many people are employed under a directorate?
Within my chief directorate, sir,
Yes.
we have 84 staff members.
84.
Yes.
How many men? Maids? How many maids?
So I would say that probably I would say that our representativity is quite balanced, about 50-50. At management level, we currently, unfortunately, have a little bit of an imbalance because our gentlemen have either left us or have passed away. But I would say 50-50.
Yeah, that's fine. We're not doing it annual report. It's necessary that I'm asking this question. We'll get to know as we move forward, okay? And then, Mwabok, can you talk to us again yourself and your office?
Thank you, Chairperson. In my office, I have several people that provide administrative support, and I'll tell you now that they are 4 in number.
Yeah.
The first one is Ms. Alta Barnett, who has just recently joined us as a secretary at, I think, level 8? Yeah, level 8. She has previously been a secretary for the previous provincial manager Gauteng, and she requested for a transfer from Gauteng to Pretoria due to personal family issues, and she needed to transfer to Pretoria. Secondly, I have a Mr. Mudisa Lekgotlo, who is the Deputy Director responsible for Finance and Administration in the Office of the DDG. I furthermore have 2
Who is this one? Where does it come from and how long has been in your system? Both of these people, the secretary first, she has been employed there when?
She has been in our employee chair. I would have to check the exact month, but it is late last year. So she's telling you.
Okay.
In the office, but she had been with the department for years in the Gauteng province.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the next person?
The next person, Mr. Mudisa Lekgotlo, I actually found him in the department when I joined in 2014. I would ask then my colleagues to find for me the exact records to say when did he start with the employer.
So you don't know the people that you work with?
I know the people that I work with. No. I have not checked what dates they started in Home Affairs, as I found all of them in the department already.
Okay.
The third one is Ms. Betty McHugh, who I've also found having served the previous DDG of HR as the Assistant Director Administration in the office of the DDG. I will also then have to confirm her date of assumption of duty, but as I'm told, she's been with the department for years. Okay. The last one is Ms. Madeleine Lange, who also has been in the department. I found all of them in the office of the DDG HR. Madeleine Lange is responsible as Assistant Director, Finance and Support.
Among your staff that is immediately with you there, who comes from Water Affairs? Is there any person that was employed at Water Affairs?
Okay. In the past, when I was still DDG Learning Academy, I had a personal assistant called Mr. Albert Zedboy, who was recruited from Home Affairs, but he has since moved. He is no longer in my office.
He was recruited from what? Home Affairs?
From Water Affairs, yeah, he was in Water Affairs, Chair.
Yeah.
You're correct. And he is now the Assistant Director in Change Management. He requested for this transfer, saying that his studies are along that line and he felt that he could be better utilized in that area. I'm sure Chairperson will appreciate that when the 2 branches merge, there would have been a lot of duplication because he was a secretary before. So we couldn't keep all of them in an administrative space, and the department decided then to redeploy them in more meaningful roles.
Why did you leave Water Affairs?
Yeah,
I don't know why did he leave Water Affairs.
Pardon?
I don't know why he left Water Affairs.
Chairperson, I know that he applied for the job like all other people that applied.
I'm asking the question.
I do not have an answer to that, sir.
You don't have an answer?
Yeah.
That's fine, I'll deal with it later. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. And then, you're not on the hold. I'll let you put you on. I can't put you because you're not on that hold. Okay, that's fine. Let's. I've noted these issues. I'll tell you why I was asking these questions that I want clarity on, and to establish the individuals that we employed there, and we'll deal with it later as we wrap up the meeting. Let us then come back to your role with regards to these transfers of people before the memorandum there. Just share with this committee how you deal with issues of transfer, especially specifically at the level of the case that is before us of Mr. Christian and Mr. Stay. And you can then give me the general approach and the processes that get impact on in that regard. Can you take us through that?
All right. Thank you, Chairperson. I will really try to do all of that.
That's fine.
Insofar as the transfer of Mr. Steyn to move from New Delhi to Germany, HR have found a request from our line function, which is immigrations, to say, HR, we need assistance. We need to transfer this individual from one mission to the other. I must say, Chairperson, that the role and the function of appointing, deploying, utilizing, managing human resources in foreign missions is a function that resides with immigrations in the space of foreign office coordination. And so HR as an enabler and a support branch assists all other branches that have similar requests to say either we want to recruit a person or we want to transfer or to deploy, whether in or out. So we provide that type of administrative support. So our role in the process was to ensure that the request that is being made by immigration at that stage to check whether, first of all, it's in line with applicable legislation, and I will talk to the legislation later. Secondly, it was also to check whether and to verify with the structure, because we are the custodians of the organizational structure. We were supposed to check with the structure whether that post really does exist, it's vacant, and it's funded and at the right level. So all those checks and balances is what HR does and checks. We also had to make sure that the incumbents that are being talked about in the submission really meet the criteria, because there's set criteria of who you can and cannot appoint in the foreign missions. And so in the checking of whether they meet the suitability criteria, we needed to verify through different means. One of those being to check the qualifications, being to check the personal suitability checks, whether it be vetting and all of that. And in that role, I must say that it is a responsibility of the branch called Counter-Corruption and Security Services. So what we normally do in all matters of recruitment is that when there's a requirement or there's a need to vet certain people, then we give them, we handle that request through that branch. We don't do it ourselves. And so we have to make sure that those checks and balances are taken care of. As requested by my client, I regard my colleague, Mr. J.K. McKay, the DDG, as my client, because now he wanted those type of services. And also he needed to check with HR, I'm sure he will testify to that, whether the request to transfer this colleague, Mr. Steyn, could be done within the applicable legislation. And yes, through the testimony that will come from Ms. Smoker, she'll testify to say to what extent did we do our checks and balances to come to that determination. So my role then in the submission, Chairperson, was having verified and ascertained whether there was need to do this and and whether the incumbent meets the requirements. I needed to make a recommendation to the DG, and that's why I appended my signature there. My signature in that submission was to confirm that indeed there's a post that exists, it is funded, and that it is at the right level, and that this person meets the selection criteria to go there. and that's what I did. All that I did was based on the recommendation that would have happened in levels below me, and that is why I have Ms. Moke with me to say to the committee, to testify to the committee what kind of issues did she check, what legislation she found us enablers and gave us then guidance in that regard. Thanks.
Tell me to the point when you now generate the minimum, this submission. Tell me your role then as you end up having to generate the memo. What informs this memo? Well, what informs the memo and the process of generating this memo? Can you talk to us about that process?
Thank you, Chairperson. As I briefly indicated in my previous response, having received a request from the DDG Immigrations to say that as a branch, we need to move one individual from this mission to that mission. We need, therefore, assistance from HR to help us do that, because writing memos of appointments and all of that is not within their technical capacity. So they requested for our assistance to do it. Ordinarily, it would have been themselves doing it. At that time, we had a gentleman called Mr. Wisani Flawani. He had since passed on, but at that time, he was the Director, People Acquisition, and he came in handy to assist us to draft this memo and to put together the information in collaboration with the branch. And so, specifically, my personal role was then to quality check the memo and to make sure that I make the recommendation to the teacher.
Let's hear you. At what point do you come in then, Ms. Mo? How do you come into the process?
So thank you very much. If you have a look at the submission at paragraph 5, there is actually a reference made to a meeting that Mr. McKay and myself had towards the end of August 2015. It cites my name in the submission. Basically, what happened is that towards the end of August, late August, very early September perhaps, I had received a request from Mr. McKay for a meeting. Mr. McKay needed assistance with regards to transfers that needed to be done within or between the missions. So I had gone to his office, and when we had the meeting, he briefly explained to me the circumstances that were being faced within the missions, which is indicated in the submission, the circumstances.
Let me go to those circumstances.
Yes. So I'll read them for you at paragraph 5 of the submission.
The submission, in your old file, if you look on the file, just bear with me just for a second. It's in the committee report too. I say everything is still. And who does not have it? Well, help members. In the new file, we have it in the new file. The new file has DG. Help members in the new file. John, are you back here? And we are interfering with people who are under oath. They have not said they have a lawyer here. What? John, they have never said they are represented. Please, unless they are represented, you can come in. Yeah. Welcome. Where's Mokoti? Mokoti, why do you hide yourself? I don't see you. Are you fine? You don't come and pay your respect to the police, yeah? Okay. Is the deputy minister here? Yes. You are underground. I did not even see that you are here. You're welcome. You're welcome, dear. You're welcome. Who else that is here that I have not recognized? Huh? Because you know what Huh? Advocate Solomon, who represent the man. Are you representing Advocate Solomon? Or the advocate here? Advocate, are you here? What do you want here? Okay, no, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. You know you can speak using this meeting. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, are we winning? I'm sorry that my approach there is different from last week's approach. The last hearing. Because I could see that when my approach is too calm, these officials take us very quickly for surprises. So I'm now going to be taking you for surprises. And as I do that, I think I do take my members too for surprises. So I will ready now, members. Ma'am Kenya submission, we're going to look at the paragraph 5 of that submission. Are we fine? Are we all fine? No, Ma'am Kenya is not fine yet. Request for approval for strategic redeployment of officials in the mission. Huh? Yeah, Department of Home Affairs, confidential, high secret, high secret, very, very high secret document. Submission comes by the name of Mr. Shungwani, designation DPA, unit people's acquisition, and the contact number there. File number and the subject, therefore, and it's addressed to the minister. Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, members, please go. Are we all ready? Okay. So can we all go to paragraph 5? We're going to talk about paragraph 5. It's leading us to paragraph 5. Can you all look at paragraph 5? Okay. Are we fine, Hussein? Okay, you can proceed, ma'am. Sorry for the delay because this is outside the strategy that the committee has developed. So time and time, I will then change the gear, and sort of have to bring them back to the new gear that they have entered into now. So let's proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'd like to just perhaps start at the beginning again to say that sometime towards the end of August 2015, maybe very, very early in September 2015, I received a request from Mr. McKay, who is the DPG Immigration Services, to meet with him to discuss the matter, or a matter that he needed to attend to, which was the transfer of staff within the missions. So we had a meeting. It was just Mr. McKay and myself. We sat down briefly, and during that meeting, Mr. McKay explained to me the circumstances that were prevailing within, or he painted a scenario of circumstances that were prevailing within the New Delhi mission, which had been captured in the submission. So I'm going to just take a minute to read paragraph 5, Chair, you requested, and then I'll come back to the account.
Right. The summary of what we discussed.
Yes, of what.
The summary of what we discussed.
Yes, sir.
So give me the discussion, not the summary.
All right.
Talking about the general come to the summary.
All right. Okay.
Because we understand from the main discussion I've had with him, then we have the summary. What was the discussion all about?
Certainly. So during the meeting, Mr. McKay explained to me that there were service delivery challenges that were being faced within the New Delhi mission, and that the current incumbents of the positions, no names were mentioned during the meeting, just that the current incumbents of those positions would need to be transferred. A decision to that effect had been taken, that the incumbents be transferred out of the mission, and that replacement capacity would need to be put into the mission. At that point in time, the names of Mr. Christians as well as Mr. Mugabe were mentioned. Like I say, the officials who would leave New Delhi were not mentioned, and I think it's probably because we manage the payroll within our department and the entire post establishment. I would be able to track quite easily who were the incumbents of those positions. But I do just want to say that the names of Mr. Steyn and then the other lady, Ms. van Rensburg, I think, that was never, it was not tabled in the meeting, but...
Please don't consult with Mr. Mackay. Let's face this. Either can face the chair. We want confirmation from Mr. Mackay. You're going to put a picture. Pretend the seat is not next to you. Right?
Yes, sir.
Just pretend the seat is not next to you. But it's next to you, but pretend.
Okay.
So that it will help you to compose yourself and give us a full account of what happened.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Mackay, the circumstances that were explained or put to me was that there were serious backlogs within the New Delhi mission. That interventions had been put into place already by the department to try and clear the backlogs, but that these interventions were failing to succeed, and that a decision had been taken that the incumbents of the two positions needed to be transferred out of New Delhi and replaced by the two officials that I've mentioned, Mr. Gideon Christians and then Mr. Mugabe. Mr. Mackay's inquiry to me was a simple one. Because, Chair, as you've heard during the day, the Foreign Office Coordination Chief Directorate functioned very independently in terms of managing its capacitation and its staff issues. There were also memorandums of agreement between the department through this unit and DIRCO on discipline, on performance, so how that relationship would work between Home Affairs and DIRCO and then the heads of missions. Which was outside of the immediate the immediate functional responsibility of the branch HR. So that unit, it had its operations, it had its systems. The reason why Mr. Mackay consulted me on this matter was not because the Chief Directorate Foreign Office Coordination did not have a policy which governed the management of staff within missions or the capacitation of missions. Indeed, there was, and I think we've included a copy of that policy in the pack. It's a departmental policy called a Policy on Placement of Employees in Missions Abroad, which was signed in 2014. There was a policy which managed these matters. Where and within the context of this policy, the intermission transfer of the incumbents of the posts would be able to be facilitated. That was not a problem. The problem was that, or the challenge was that the two officials who would need to be placed into the Delhi missions were identified as officials who were within the country, within the borders of South Africa, and so it was not intermission transfers that would a process that would be used to take them into New Delhi, and that the current policy on the placement of employees abroad did not cater for this scenario. It did not express itself on the capacitation of missions through any methodology other than, firstly, within your 4-year duty tour cycle. And I need to just indicate that your placement in a mission abroad runs 4 years cyclically. We heard that. So every 4 years or 2 years prior a new cycle, we would commence as HR. We would support the branch through putting out advertisements and managing a recruitment process while supporting, facilitating a full recruitment process. Now, because this request cropped up around 18 to 20 months after the recruitment process for that current duty tour cycle had closed, this is where the confusion or the lack of clarity on the side of the branch immigration came in, in terms of how would one then, if that was the decision that was taken, sorry, apologies. Thank you. If there was a decision that had been taken to move RSA-based staff into the missions, on what basis could or would that be done? The question from Mr. McKay's side to me was legislatively based. Is this doable in terms of law? Chairperson, I think I need to just make it very clear at this point in time that during the meeting that I had with Mr. McKay, it was absolutely clear that the decision to do the relocation of staff had been taken. That was not under question. What, however, was not certain at that point in time. Mr. Stein gave me the word.
You must be careful of staying. You must be careful of staying. Don't just stay. It's a really good thing. Okay, take your time. Take your time. Take your time. Take your time. There's some orange here. I want to fill up the throat. Orange. Okay, take your time. Yes.
Thank you, sir. What was very clear in that meeting was that a decision had already been taken, that deployments needed to take place. That was not a matter of conversation. That was not a matter that was open to negotiation. That was not a matter on which the branch was requesting the input, contribution, validation, or assistance. The decision was taken. The question was, is this legally able? Can this be done in terms of law? So I, at that point in time, said to Mr. McKay that in terms of this policy on the placement of the placement of employees in missions abroad, although the policy did not pronounce on the specific scenario, that when you read the policy and you look at the base legislation in terms of which it was developed, it was in fact doable. So it was not irregular or unlawful to be able to take within the 4-year duty tour cycle to transfer staff from South Africa into a mission outside of the recruitment process because that cycle had closed. And the policy did make provision for it. So I'm not sure, Chief, could I go into the policy? Could I continue? All right, thank you. All right. So, thank you, sir. So I just want to also just make it, emphasize that to the committee members that there was confusion on the side of the branch immigration simply because the specific situation with which it was confronted was not spelled out in black and white clearly within the policy that they could read it. So if you go into the policy, and I'm sure this should be in your packs as well, if you go to, I'd like to direct your attention to page 17 of the policy, which is paragraph 12. Now, maybe I should just mention that the policy caters for, it does cater for transfers within the context of missions. And those, well, firstly, it says at the beginning of your 4-year duty tour, we would follow a recruitment process. So normal process of putting out an advert and following that. Then within the duty tour, changes could be made. Paragraph, I think it's 9.9 of the policy makes provision for an employer-initiated movement between missions, but then also that employees who are in hardship missions can, at the 2-year period, halfway through their duty tour, they could request to be placed in a mission that would not be classified as a hardship mission. So while you were abroad, you would be able to do transfers within. But this specific situation of within the duty tour, taking an employee from the country into a mission outside of a recruitment process, that is where the clarity was sought. So if we go to paragraph 12 of the policy, I'd like to read for you the specific section. Paragraph 12 of the policy.
In the file, you have the policy. You don't have it in the file. You don't have it in the file. But I'm going to allow you to read it. Members will know. Meantime, we must get copies prepared. You can prepare copies and you can department that what we call government work. You can do this thing within 10 minutes. Then you can proceed, but please just be very slow as you read so that members will cross forward. But state the paragraph of the line that you are quoting from the number so that members can then note it and the rest you refer to the policy chart document and then
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to be reading then for record purposes the title of the policy, which is the policy on the placement of employees in foreign missions. It was signed and came into effect in 2014 within the Department of Home Affairs. I'm reading page 17, paragraph 12 of the policy. The heading of the section is deviation. Paragraph 12.1 says, it reads as follows: policy provisions that are not covered in this policy shall be dealt with in terms of the legislation and prescripts that supersede this policy as stipulated. Policy provisions that are not covered in this policy shall be dealt with in terms of legislation and prescripts that supersede this policy as stipulated. That's what the statement makes. Now, when one goes to section 4, paragraph 4 of this very policy, it actually outlines the legislation and prescripts that supersede the policy. In other words, the legislation on which basis or from which this policy was drawn down. And I'd like to specifically read to you paragraph 4 of the policy, which has the following. It's 4.1, the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. 4.2, the Public Service Act, 1994, Act 103 of 94. And then the Public Service Regulations, 2001, as amended. So when I looked at the Act and the regulations, as well as the deviation clause, on grounds of my interpretation of the legislative framework that underpinned this policy, I indicated to Mr. McKay that indeed the transfer of officials from South Africa to the missions abroad could be facilitated in terms of the legislation, the Public Service Act, read with the regulations, and if permitted, I would gladly, Chair, read the relevant sections of the Public Service Act. It's not a lot, but I think it's important for the sake of the committee. So in terms of the Public Service Act, it's section 8A of the Act, and the heading of this specific section of the Act is applicable mechanisms for obtaining the services of personnel, section 8A. And in this section of the Public Service Act, it cites relevant to this scenario or relevant to general public service employment, two categories. Firstly, it cites appointments. So when positions within the public service would need to be capacitated, the first basis you would do it is appointments. And for us, appointments always go with an advert in the normal process, which I'd outline gladly later. Then at section 8A, subsection C of the Public Service Act, it says deployments. The heading is called deployments, and it cites 3 types of deployments that can be done to capacitate positions. The first one is transfers in terms of section 14 of the Public Service Act. The second one is secondments in terms of section 15 of the Public Service Act. And the third one is directives to perform other functions or temporary reassignments in terms of section 32 of the Public Service Act. Section 80 of the Act gave executive authorities the flexibility to, within the conditions that may have been prescribed by the legislation, to use these mechanisms to capacitate their positions. And I'd like to just indicate again that one of the forms of deployment is transfers in terms of section 14 of the Act. So when we went to section 14 of the Act, so just basically this specific section of the Act provides executive authorities with the authority to be able to transfer staff. And I'm going to actually read, if I may just go in so we get a good context there. Section 14 of the Act says that subject to subsection 2, 3, and 4, in other words, taking cognizance of and complying with subsection 2, 3, and 4, any employee of a department may be transferred within the department by its executive authority or in between departments on grounds of an agreement and an approval between those departments. It goes on to say that the transfer has to be made in such manner and on such conditions as may be transferred only if 1. The employee requests the transfer or consents to the transfer, or in the absence of such a request or consent, after due consideration of any representation by the employee, the transfer is in public interest. Now, so I just maybe need to mention to the committee that